Welcome back, everybody, to the final week of Wheel of Time Anger. Yes, I started a Memory of Light today, and we're going to talk about the prologue and the first 7 chapters of that one, and we'll see if I manage to finish it by the end of the week. Possibly I'll extend it until Saturday to just get everything done within April, which I promised. So I hope it'll work out. We will see. And yeah, I guess it's time to start that one. Unfortunately, I still have boring beer. We will see if my shop has new good beer really soon. Until then, well, cheers. All right. So, what do we get? Well, problems, of course. And, you know, with all of these books, like, the beginning is always hard to talk about too many things because mostly we're laying ground for, like, later things to happen. And we'll see how all of that will work out. So, let's look at things. Let's start with the prologue. All right, so the prologue is probably the least prologue-ish prologue in the entire series, and I wonder why we even have this as a prologue. Because, see, when we started these books, all the way back, it usually was like, you know, you have a prologue that gives, you know, something that is outside of our main viewpoint characters, and then we jump, and usually every chapter is mostly one viewpoint character, maybe 2. And that has slowly faded out. So the prologue was usually something to do, like a way for Robert Jordan back then, to give the reader information that he would otherwise not have, right? Remember, you know, the first one, the prologue with, what's his name? Lews Theron going mad and creating Dragon Mount. That's information that you don't necessarily, there's no way for that information to be available to the reader if we only go through the, you know, eyes of, or like the viewpoints of Rand, Matt, Perrin, and Egwene and Nynaeve, right? Because those are the ones that we have in the first book. So that makes sense. Even like the second one, we have that really stupid meeting of the Dark Friends in wherever, right? It's the same problem. It's like, once again, we get information that we have no way to have later on, right? Or can't get through our viewpoint characters. But that need, you know, goes away throughout the series because we get like actual chapters where we can watch the Super League of Evil, like the Dark Friend, not the Dark Friend, but you know, all those people. We get like tons of viewpoint characters, which is fine, but why would we still need a prologue? A prologue should be something that is set outside the main narrative or before the main narrative, because otherwise it's just chapter 1. It may be a long chapter 1, but it's just chapter 1. And Robert Jordan went and did that most of the time, still like sort of, sometimes better, sometimes worse, but we always got like a couple of viewpoints that are outside. Some of them kind of recapping stuff that happened before, all of these things. The new one doesn't really do any of that. Yes, there's a small bit at the beginning with like that guy that we already completely forgot about. What's his name? Jadar, something like that. You know, that the husband and last living rebel all the way out there in in Andor. And we see his people leaving him because he's completely insane now, and they are like, you know what, let's go and find us a final battle and fuck you. And I'm fine with that. That would be an interesting prologue in itself, because it's like, yeah, the whole idea of like the dragon freeing, like breaking all bonds and whatnot, that's something that you would see there, like shown there, and I'm fine with that. Don't get me wrong, I'm really fine with that. That's cool. But the rest of the prologue, which is, once again, like a fairly long chapter, like the prologue has like an audiobook, it's like 3 hours of audiobook, right? So why... and we'll get there, is literally storylines that then flow into move directly into the next chapters. Mainly, of course, the large one, large storyline of Talmanas and gang and the band of the Red Hand going into Caimlin. That we ended up seeing attacked by Trollocs and whatnot. That's like the large part. We go back to that one again and again. We have like some weird glimpses of other stuff like preparation for that like large conference on the next day on the fields of Merilor. Is that the right name? Yeah, that place. Right. I mean, so we have that conversation with Avienda and the Wise Ones. We have all of these bits and pieces that are basically chapters of the main narrative. And I'm like, why would you call this a prologue? Just because you feel that a book needs a prologue? No, it doesn't. No book needs that. Just because a lot of epic fantasy stories do have that sort of prologue, that structure, doesn't mean you need to. If you do something like that, if you want to have like a prologue, yeah, sure, why not? Like, look at, say, Malazan Book of the Fallen. Those prologues usually take place outside the main narrative. You go at, Garden of the Moon, it's that meeting like 10 years or whatever before the main narrative begins of Gardens of the Moon. And with Memories of Ice, it's even like 300,000 years before the actual story takes place. That's how you do a prologue. And, someone like Tolkien just didn't use a prologue for Lord of the Rings because he didn't need to. Yes, there's no way to say that yes there. It's like, no, you don't need to. So I'm not quite sure why we got that kind of prologue structure here, because I don't need it. And it could just have well been like more chapters, just regular chapters, because we have lost that structure of like one viewpoint character per chapter, something that you see with, say, Game of Thrones, right? Like A Song of Ice and Fire does have those chapters, those prologue chapters, because they're written from a different viewpoint character than our main characters that we have throughout the series. And that would make sense. Here we don't get that, so I'm like, whatever. Why do we do that? It's a needless and stupid editing choice, basically. It's like, why? There's more things to be annoyed of course, about. One thing that I noticed here is in that first chapter, the prologue, we have that battle for Caimlin that's all about keeping those cannons, the dragons, safe from the Trollocs and Myrddraal, and, all of that. I'm fine with that as a chapter. It makes a lot of sense. But what I noticed is we have this running battle through the city. And while there are refugees to, run around and cry, theatrically in the background to be saved by our gang, by Talmanas mostly, what we don't get at all is like actual, damage. Like, yeah, the city is burning and presumably hundreds of thousands of people died, as we get told later on, which is like, how large do you think medieval cities could actually grow? And I'm not sure, like, hundreds of thousands. Yes, there was Paris and London, and that's about it, and Rome. I like that. I don't know. We're not going into that sort of discussion here. My point is that a horde of monsters comes out into this place. Presumably another couple hundred thousand people, right? And, like, what we see is battles, and we see corpses, mounds of corpses of Trollocs that are used as ramps and whatnot, and so forth. But we don't see any civilian victims there. And that is an issue. That is a problem, I feel. Because, if you have war, and you just, like, sanitize it in a way that you just leave out all the actual pain and just have the heroic slaughtering of like the enemies, which is what you get there. It's like, yeah, sometimes it's like 100 soldiers fell. It's like, all right, why not a single scene where Talmanas or any other of those soldiers sees killed civilians? Why do we leave that bit out? And why do we let Telmanis actually survive against all odds at the end when, what's her name? Nynaeve just heals him back to normal. I'm like, you're supposed to be dead. Why do we need, like, sort of almost divine intervention here? So my problem with that is that we go back to the tell, don't show way of doing things that what we've like seen with Wheel of Time so much, right? It's like we get told this is like a desperate battle, but we don't see the desperation because like there are no real consequences. Nameless people die in the background, and we don't even see the corpus of the good guys. No, we only see, those like monsters that are, pushed around for like cinematic effect. And I'm like, I don't know, dude, it just takes away a lot of the impact that kind of scene would have. It's like, and that's a huge problem for later on when we have Elaine learning about the scene, right? Elaine learns about what's going on there, and her choice would be to like either go there to be the queen in the way that she has to be the queen, or remain to do her job at that like final parley. And I'm fine with, but if we are sitting here as the readers and we're like, we've seen a bunch of like civilians leave the place, but we've never seen like actual descriptions of any form of like, atrocities towards her population, like that's no real choice. Like her not doing the thing that really should hurt her, which is leaving her people to suffer. If I don't believe that is a choice for her, or that there is an actual impact if she doesn't do that thing, like whatever. And a character that was like, say, I have to do this for the greater good or whatever. I know it's the greater good to stay here for that final parley before we start everything and whatnot. But my heart wishes to be back in Andor to do the thing that a queen should do. That will really be cool. But it's not there because, whatever. 100,000 died, but we haven't seen any of them. And telling us numbers of that size is a problem. We have that throughout the series. The numbers have grown insanely large. We're basically like up to battles where we have like millions of like people coming together to kill each other. And the end of chapter 7 is like a perfect example for that. I'll come to that in a minute. So we see a lot of that here, and as I said, like I don't think it would. I didn't see any necessity to call this a prologue. Yeah, take the bit with, where we learn about the raising of Mazrim Taim to an actual Forsaken. We'll talk about that in a minute. Don't worry, it's a problem. And the fact that Graendal got, like, body changed. I guess she got dark magical cosmetic surgery because she's now ugly. We need to know that she's ugly, which is a punishment because she was for her. Before that, she was, like, super, like, good looking and whatnot. But whatever. The main point there is we suddenly can actually raise people to be new Forsaken, which, yeah. But take all the rest, the whole bit of, about the good guys in the Black Tower trying to free themselves and all of that stuff. Those would be normal chapters. So yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things that I'm not just, it's an editing choice that I think is odd because the only reason to do it that way is like that you feel that you have to have a prologue. And if you feel that you need a prologue for the structure, then find something that's outside the main narrative. Like that opening scene with, whatever. Fine. All right. Okay, let's look at the Forsaken issue with Mazrim Taim, who is now called Mahail and is a new Forsaken. And why is that a problem? Well, first of all, it's not a problem. I have no issue with there being new Forsaken. I mean, we don't know what makes Forsaken, or Chosen, whatever you want to call him. Apparently, you make some sort of deal with the Dark One himself. How that works, I don't know. I guess you go to that like hole through that tunnel with Shaida Haram. That stuff, right? I'm fine with that. The question is, if that option was available all the time, Why did we get all the we resurrect all these old Forsaken and now we don't do it anymore? And like in the last book, at the like almost last moment, we suddenly get a new Forsaken because we're like, maybe I don't know. It feels like the problem we have, like say with the beginning of is it? Yeah, Great Hunt. Like book 2, when suddenly Lan out of nowhere tells Rand that his sword is even better than just like a normal Heron Mark sword, which doesn't, prevent it from being destroyed later on, but whatever. Right, the point there is that out of nowhere, suddenly we add something to the storyline, and this time around we're doing it with no like explanation on why it's only now. We do that like almost at the last point. If we had a scene of Mazrim Taim being raised to like a role of Forsaken or anything like that, fairly like in the middle of the story, like say after is it Winter's Heart? After Winter's Heart, right? When that absolutely useless guy Aginor got killed for the second time, right? When like maybe at that point, right, there's people being bale-fired all over the place, and suddenly we're like, we can't resurrect those. Let's find new people. Let's find someone there who is absolutely evil and or dark or whatever, and make them Forsaken. Why not? Could have like done that. It's especially if you have people that could learn how to channel with no problem. Like what's her name, Suroth, right? That one. I was hanging out with what's her name? I keep forgetting. Semirog. All right, it's like Semirog or whatever. Make someone like that, like raise some players from this current crop up and make them like earlier on than just in the last book. Because right now it's like, what will Mazrim Taim gain from being called Forsaken in the last book? I mean, I'm sure he'll die within the next, 20 chapters or so. It's like, it further makes the title Forsaken kind of meaningless. Either it's because they are just basically what you might call, angels, or like fallen angels in that case, whatever you want to call them, in a religious kind of way. It's like they're extremely powerful and old beings. They have all this knowledge from like the Age of Legend, and that makes them like more powerful. I'm fine with that. In that case, it's a finite number. You drop them, they're gone. Or it's just like you're a very powerful person, a very ambitious person that is willing to sell their power and soul to the Dark One to gain more powers that they get through the Dark One. Like that true power thing that Moridin Ishamael is wielding, for example, and Graendal did a bit of that. Either they gain that, and in that case, you can just take someone who is very powerful and on his way to become, even more powerful, and you can just turn that person into like a Forsaken and give them Dark One's power that they can suddenly start to wield. That's fine if you want to do that. I'm just like saying that raising Mazrim Taim to the role of Forsaken, or in this case, Chosen, in the final book feels a bit like a weird, stupid new trick. It's like, what does he actually gain? Couldn't he just like continue his job as just the guy he is? Does the title actually give any more like power, impact, or whatever to him? I don't think so. And it's further, further devaluing in a way the title of Forsaken or Chosen, because it happens so late in the game. All right. Then there's obviously the whole Black Tower thing. So the Black Tower is all about Mazrim Taim turning people into turning them to the shadow, making them evil by force. And we knew that was a possibility all the way back with like the 13 Aes Sedai and whatever, and the circle with like 13 Aes Sedai and 13 Murderals. So apparently there's Murderal hanging out in the Black Tower, I guess. Because it was raised as a possibility all the way back in, I don't know, book 2, I think. Book 2 or book 3, basically. When the Yeah, it must have been book 3, basically, because in book 2, they're still, the Black Aja is still sort of in the White Tower. Right, that book 3. So we know of that possibility, and to have them, raise those people in the Black Tower, those Ashaman, I can see it, but once again, it's like an editing issue that I see, because who cares about the Black Tower? Yes, Rand gave taught a few people to channel, where people like Logain and these Ashaman that hang out with Rand, but no one gives a fuck about the Black Tower up till now. They just happen in the Black Tower, and suddenly we need to care about them existing again. It would have been so much better if we'd had more, or earlier on, some more impact. As Rand seemingly forgot about the Black Tower. And that's definitely a problem, because we don't have any explanation on why he never, goes back or does anything with it. We get no explanation for that, and I can't, I can't even fault Rand for forgetting the Black Tower, because I merely forgot the fucking Black Tower existed because nothing ever happened there. And that could have been solved easily. I don't know, introduce some of those Ashaman earlier on, or have a few scenes set in the Black Tower early on. I mean, we have 1 or 2, but they don't really matter, so whatever. And even once we have all those people from the White Tower, the Red Aja group, go there, which I think was at the end of Knife of Dreams, or maybe even before, maybe already Crossroads of Twilight. Not Knife of Dreams, Knife of Dreams, I don't know, somewhere around book 10 or 11. We could have had more information there. Just, I don't know, move parts of the stuff in the Black Tower a few books further up the road into what some of you call the slog would have helped, right? Have that plot line extend a bit longer, because now it feels like, while going through all the notes, we just discovered that the Black Tower existed, so let's make up a quick storyline to get rid of those people as well. And I'm like, yeah, I don't know, dude, maybe just let it lie, no one would think about it anymore. All right, let's continue then. The rest of the chapters are basically all about that meeting with Rand and all the monarchs of the world, and everyone is like, we can't let Rand break the seals, and everyone's standing there, and then Rand just gets more or less what he wants anyway, because out of nowhere Moraine shows up, and everyone listens to Moraine for reasons, I guess, that are mostly we knew her earlier on, maybe we'll trust her now that she's come back from somewhere. I don't know. And I feel that's part of the problem here, right? The problem with that whole parley is that we have everyone there. Rand makes some demands. Everyone's like, we don't like that kind of thing. We don't want United Nations of the Randlands with actual enforcing body or whatever. We don't want that. So we'll just talk about stupid things all the time. And everyone's like, it takes a long ass time to go there and to come there. Everyone's just walking around and feeling happy, and Rand gets to fuck someone, which is, good for Avienda. So she actually got there, got some Rand before the end, which is good. But yeah, I don't know. The actual way it was solved at the end felt very, very convenient to me. It's alright, so here's how it goes. Egwene needs to break the seals. And then that part is solved. And she just says alright, I'll do it because there's some fucking prophecy somewhere, and I've just ignored them before, so now if Moraine says that that's how it goes, I'll just do it. And Avienda is you know what? We need to give the Aiel a job. And Perrin is I have the perfect idea. Let them enforce the rules of the peace. And everyone's all right, sweet, we got it. I know why it is that way, which is we need to get everyone sorted for the final battle. I know that in an audiobook, the final battle is almost a quarter of the entire book. More like 20%, but still. It's enormous. So I know we need everyone to sort out these things in the final battle, but the way it is built just, I don't know, doesn't really feel that good for me. I mean, basically it's like, I mean, we're coming to that point with the main narrative that really disturbs me, which is that Christian undertone of like all our human struggles are nothing. It's all the struggle of the good one against the dark one. We need to come to peace with everyone and submit to the will of our Savior so that Savior can go and do the thing. And I disagree with that. But once again, it's a matter of pacing for me, is what it is. And I think it could have been handled better with like giving sort of, Perrin's like revelation that the Aiel need to have a purpose. And he tells that to Rand. I'm like, why is Perrin telling that to Rand? Why isn't it just one of the Aiel for once? Because at the end of the day, the fact that like he's like Sanderson or Jordan is aware enough of to see that to at least put in that the Aiel are seen as savages, so people think that they can get away with it afterwards. But like the fundamental point is that the Aiel are still pushed around by white people, by Perrin in this case, who tells it to Rand. It's like, why like why can't they themselves say, yeah, we need a purpose, we have a purpose? Like Rourke is like, we have a purpose and that's this one, so don't forget us. But no one, like, why doesn't it, actually be, why isn't it Aviendha who comes up with that idea? Or Rourke, if you know you can't have, like, women have good ideas. Why does it have to be Perrin? It's like, that's an odd choice. Because what it boils down to is that you're saying all the good ideas come from, like, the three white dudes from, what's the place? The Two Rivers. Which you then have built up as this idyllic place of like rural simplicity where men are men and women are women and everyone's honorable, honest, and has small businesses that the big government is not and the deep state have no influence over. And no, that's not a narrative I like, especially with the like continuous like colonialist view on the Aiel as those savages that like just like get pushed around and used all the time by those other people around them. Like, why not give them some more autonomy? Why not have someone of them come up with the idea? That would have like made a huge difference for me. And yeah, I'm sorry, it shows a certain prejudice in the author that you can't even like, that both authors did not like figure out that would be like a really cool idea to just like shift around those bits of agency to somewhere else. They're like, yeah, no, we won't do that. It's like, all right, so I'll come up with something for you to do. But it's always those white Andoran telling them what to do. I just don't like that. So yeah, we get all of that. Egwene does what she has to, agrees to do what she wants to do. Rand gets what he really wants, which is his peace, to leave something for the future. Moraine is back again. The only one we haven't seen yet is Matt. I hope he'll show up soon. I assume he's going to Shanshan, to Ebu Dar to meet with Tuon, because we need to incorporate that last bit at some point. Otherwise, why even have them in the books? And then we get to like cinematic stupidity, and that is the battle of Lan and Gang against the Dark One in on Tarvin's Gap. Right. So Rand is like, okay, we made our deal, let's go and help a dear friend. And that's like one of the most cheesy movie, like superhero movie, stupid like scene cuts and plot developments ever. Because it's like over the topness, right? So Lan and Gang are like almost dying. They have found their pride, and it's wonderful. They do the final thing, what they really were meant to do. And Lan is like, I didn't have the right to just like exclusively keep the right to die for Malkier to myself. All of that's pretty good. I mean, it's ultra cheesy machismo kind of way of looking at things, but it's well done until in that way. And then what we do then is, like, out of nowhere, in their last final situation, gateways go open and hundreds of thousands of people jump through those gateways and kill all the Trollocs. No. Look, I mean, no. And the problem is not that they get, like, some help or whatever. I'm fine with that. It's nice that someone remembers them. I would have preferred to have them, like, just die and just have that, like, point where they get one final ride out there to do, you know, your, like, Theoden riding on the fields of whatever it's called, on the Pelennor fields and dying there. Something like that kind of ending for Lan would have been cool. Don't get me wrong, it's as I said, it's terribly masculine and all kinds of archaic bullshit, but it's effective. It really is effective. But, like, have gates, and even if you want to save them, I'm fine with that. You know, we've read Lord of the Rings, we've read the end of, like, the Battle of Helm's Deep, with the trees coming or whatever. I'm fine with something like that from time to time. But to just, like, go, like, all right, just I pop it out and I drop 100,000 people through, it's the numbers thing again, right? It's like, look, that's unrealistic as fuck. Whether we want to or not, we know how large an army of 100,000 people is. And to just open a gateway in a place that we've just been told is far too narrow for a cavalry charge, we suddenly open those gateways and drop 100,000 people through? How's that possible? And, yeah. Why not in that case just, you know, use the one power to take down those mountains and block the entire gap? Would have just done the same thing. Why do that? And the answer is, it's cinematically heroic, and that's all it is. And I personally don't need that form of, like, you know, this is not Marvel, this is not like a Marvel movie or anything where you need those, like, over-the-top superhero style changes where suddenly our rescuer comes out of nowhere and does largely over-the-top things, and it's just too much. I don't know. I just didn't feel... Because if you go through with stuff like that, it's like, is there any meaningful sacrifice within these books if you want to have the narrative that the sacrifice is meaningful? Or do we have our superheroes that will just, like, drop out of nowhere and always beat the Dark One wherever? And that's something I just really don't need at all. Let's look at the final thing, and that is obviously the Black Tower storyline with... I keep forgetting his name. The guy who can only make gateways and nothing else. And him and that red one, Pevara, they mutually bond after, you know, she does it without asking and so forth. And we've spoken about that, but there's a good scene sort of afterwards. We need to talk about whether that's good or not. That is, right, she bonds him against his will, then he bonds her against his will, and they find out that it's actually good after all, and it works wonderful, and then they have their scene and sit down and tell each other their life stories and why they are who they are. And yes, that conversation is wonderful, but it still doesn't change the fact that people did something really atrocious, and I don't know. It is just one of those things where I'm just annoyed by the fact that with a concept like bonding against someone's will, being in the world, which is tantamount to rape, with such a concept, a plot device in the world, it feels like people are throwing that one or using that one with way too little care about what it actually means and what it does. And that's my issue here. It's like, I don't necessarily really hate that storyline, and as I said, the scene of them, like, figuring out their differences and understanding, that's wonderful, but why not switch it around? Have them have the conversation first, and then do it, like, properly, because, yeah, that would be cool. But we don't get that. We just don't care about those implications. And one final one that we need to talk about is an end justifies the means kind of thing, which is Rand is like, all right, we'll make peace with the Shan-Chen, but they get to keep their slaves, and we can figure out how maybe to buy them free afterwards, but we'll just allow the slavery because past things are past, and the past, and we need to look towards the future. And that's just horrific. Like, it was already bad when Perrin just, like, made that deal and sold all those wise ones into slavery, and no one talked about it, and now we just say, well, you know what? Can't change it now. Let's just keep them let's just let them do it continuously. It's like, that's morally absolutely horrific. And how can Rand be the supposed good guy who's in charge of saving the light and saving the world against the Dark One, if he's, on the other hand, just shrugs away like the slavery of millions, like, yeah, well, I can't change it right now, let's focus on the other things. No, because if you're fighting for a world of humanity full of slavery, dude, you might as well just not bother. And it's that attitude towards the Shan-Chan where we're supposed to, think that what they do is terrible. And then it's used once again with like so little regard for like its actual implications. We use it to, humiliate Elida because that's really cool. We probably have some more people, supposedly deserving people, get like enslaved, and then we just shrug it away. It's like, we won't change that institution at this point. We'll even let them keep it as long as they make peace with us. It's like, no. If that's the good guys, I don't need the good guys. Maybe breaking the world and letting the other side figure it out for once might actually be a smart move. I don't know. It just really, really pisses me off that we just like use the idea of slavery, and it is slavery. We use the idea of slavery in that regard and just like accept it in the world and just use it as something to satisfy the audience's thirst for revenge when it takes over, bad people. And if it's like, we don't care about the rest, all of the other good people, then it's like, well, we can't solve this right now. There's larger things at stake. No, there's never larger things at stake. If there's something you can change it now. Don't argue with but there's people starving in Africa. No, you can do it right now. You go ahead and do it. Or just don't include shit like that in your story. It's fucked up, and it once again shows us that it's like, as long as it's like just the Aiel being there and all these other people, well, it's not us, so let them just like do it for a while. Like, those implications, my friends, are not good, but apparently hundreds or thousands of enslaved Aiel don't count for much with our good buddy Rand, because he's a white Andorran Protestant. And with those wonderful views, I'll leave you for now, and we'll talk about more Shan-Chan shit tomorrow, I assume. So yeah, have a great day. Cheers.